All right, I'm starting recording as usual, and this is chapter 6. And again, for the purpose of this basic course, we are not going to go too deep into the components, and I will show you as we go. So these are the concepts that we will need to know, starting from ingestion, digestion, movement, absorption, elimination, and the functions of each part. But I will show you exactly what we need to focus on. But these concepts are things that we need to have basic idea. Um, so basically what we're going to do with the digestive system is we put the food in our mouth and we call that ingestion. And we're going to break it down a little bit in our mouth. We're going to break it down as much as possible. And then it's going to be swallowed, which is the next part, down the esophagus. Then it's going to go to the stomach to do more digestion. And then the small intestine, more digestion plus absorption. And then to the large intestine, absorption of certain things, but then making the remnants into the feces where it will be excreted or we will get rid of it through the ends of the digestive system, which is rectum, in which we store the feces, and then anus to eliminate it. So expect to see in your exam, and this is something that I actually want you to know, these different parts that I just mentioned. So you can see a picture like that because these are basics. So you need to know this. What is this? Mouth, tongue, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. This is the liver, and this is the gallbladder. And right here behind the stomach is the pancreas. These are basics. You need to know it one by one. So if I give you something like that, you need to label it. If you see picture, and I'm most likely I'm going to ask you about this, basics. I'm not going into the depth. These are just the basics. So you do need to know each part of those, labeling it. One more time, mouth. Behind the mouth is pharynx. Esophagus is this long tube. Stomach, and we will discuss more about the stomach specifically. Small intestine, which is 3 parts. The first part right here, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, and then the large intestine, starting from here, cecum, ascending colon, right colic flexure, transverse colon, left colic flexure, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anus. These are the basic parts. I would get a copy of this and like open a picture or something and start labeling it. You should practice that. So these basic terms are things that you do need to know. Ingestion, you put the food in your mouth. Digestion is breaking down the food into small particles, but it goes into 2 steps that you need to know. First part is mechanical, that you're chewing it. This is mechanical movement. In your mouth, using your teeth and your tongue, and also in your stomach, there are strong muscles that are going to break it down further. We call that mechanical part. But beside that, that's not enough because this will break down the bulk food into small pieces, but not enough to be absorbed. What's absorption? To move it down, like in a small intestine, it moves from the lumen into the blood. It has to be very small. It has to be the basic units. And I will tell you what I mean by that. But in order to do that, mechanical is not enough. You need to do chemical digestion, which is basically enzymes that are going to break down the food, the small pieces of food now. because you finished the mechanical part already, into smaller pieces, the smallest units of each one type of food. We will learn more about that. The basic foods are protein, carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and other things. You're going to break each one of those into smaller pieces. I'll give you more practical example. Let's say I'm eating bread. In my mouth, I'm going to chew it, chew it, chew it, and my saliva will break it down. And then when it leaves my mouth and go to the pharynx and then to the esophagus, it is smaller pieces, but actually pieces that you can see. These pieces that you can see is very large to be absorbed. It cannot penetrate, it cannot pass through the lumen, passing through the wall and go to the blood. You need to break down these tiny pieces that you can see into smallest pieces, which is something that you cannot see. Like protein is going to be amino acids. This is not something that you can see. It's too small, but it is small enough to pass and be absorbed. So this is for digestion. Movement, we have different types of movements that we need to understand, which is basically two types of movement. As the food moves down, like in this alimentary tract, how does it move? This is called the movement. The first movement is peristalsis, which is pushing it one way. Like it goes from the esophagus to from the pharynx to the esophagus, down the esophagus, moving, 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 to the stomach, moving, 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 to the small intestine, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, moving, large intestine, cecum, ascending, and so on. It keep on moving. So you're moving in one direction now, from the mouth to the anus, you name it, from the pharynx to the esophagus, from the first part of the esophagus, second part, third part, to the stomach, to the other part of the stomach, and so on. So you're moving in one direction only, and we call that peristalsis. There is another movement though that goes back and forth, and not in one direction. It goes back and forth, back and forth. And this is the other movement called segmentation, which is going to help us like do more exposure of the tiny particles of nutrients in order to be digested, chemically digested more. After you do that, and after you finish what you need to do, which is chemical and mechanical digestion, now you're done. What do you mean I'm done? I mean, I broke down each one of the particles of food into the smallest unit that can be absorbed. Like example, protein become amino acid now. Amino acid is the smallest building unit, and it can pass. Monosaccharides, something like the glucose for carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, break it down all the way until it's small enough. When it's small enough, it will pass through the wall of the intestine to the blood. We call that absorption. Do we do absorption in the large intestine? Yes, certain things, not the food itself, not the main food. There are certain things I will tell you about. But then at the end, when you take all what you need, the remnants, including the food that you don't need or undigested food, if you have extra, that's one thing. And waste products, something that's useless, you didn't need it. Anything like that will be stored here in the rectum. It will go to the anus and it will be eliminated, which is this part, elimination. Here are the different parts: mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. This is moving down. The lining of the digestive system, I want you to know the basics, but details only for the stomach. The whole digestive tract. Let me show you this picture again. When you put the food in your mouth, it will pass through mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. This is called the alimentary canal or digestive canal, not the digestive system. Canal. Canal is the pathway from the beginning to the end. There are things that's added, appendages, like liver, like gallbladder, like pancreas. These are not part of the alimentary canal. It's not a canal. These are organs added. When you add these organs, you call it digestive system. So there is a difference between system and canal. Canal is just a pathway. System is the canal plus these extra organs. What are these layers that we need to see here? The innermost here is called mucosa. Next, submucosa. What's sub? Under, like submarine, subway, sub, under. So under the mucosa is submucosa. And then the next layer is the layer that contain muscles, different types of muscles, and we call it muscularis. Muscularis muscles. Usually we have two types of muscles. One that are circular. Look how circular, like circle, circle, circle along the lumen piece. The other one are called longitudinal. It goes parallel to the longitudinal axis of the canal. So we call those together, those two types of muscles, we call it muscularis right here. Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis with its two layers, and the outermost is called serosa, the cover from outside. You need to know this. So here it is. What are the two types of breaking down? Which is digestion, mechanical digestion, and chemical digestion. The tract, which is the same as the canal, tract or canal is the same, starting from the mouth to the anus. What are the processes that you have here? You put the food in your mouth, we call it ingestion. You break down the food, we call it digestion. It moves down the digestive tract or canal, we call it movement. Then you absorb a good part of it, and the remnants will be eliminated. The layers that you need to know, 4 layers: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa. Okay, so here it is again. Mechanical and chemical digestion. Understand this. Ingestion, you put the food in your mouth. Digestion, 2 components. Mechanical, you break down the food, the bulk, into tiny pieces. And then chemical, the tiny pieces into the building units. You are going to use your teeth in order to do that. And the teeth, there are 2 types of teeth. Primary, which is the one in young children, infants and young children, or young children, I should say. And then they are going to fall, we know that, and replaced by permanent teeth. And the teeth is just similar to the bone. And you don't have to know the details here unless you are interested to know. Just know that we have these teeth, upper row and lower row, and it's not complete until the age of 25. At the age of 25, we start to have the wisdom teeth, which is extra. We have 18 on top, including not all of us. If you are like 18, 20, 21, 23, something like that, most likely don't have the wisdom teeth. So you don't have 8, 8, 8, 8. You don't have that yet, which is the total is 16, 16. No, you have 7, 7, 7, 7. And if you have the wisdom teeth, it's 8, 8, 8, 8. The total is 32. Should it be 32? No. In adults, it's 28 or 32. 28 if you don't have the wisdom teeth yet. If you have it, it's going to be 32. We have salivary glands that will secrete saliva, and the saliva is to moist, and also it helps in the chemical digestion a little bit, like these, parotid, submandibular, sublingual. You also have the tongue. Why do we have the tongue? The tongue is going to move the food in our mouth in order to be able to move it in different parts in order to chew it, which is a chemical digestion. At the end, what's going to leave your mouth and go to the pharynx is called bolus. The bolus is going to move down from the mouth to the esophagus, to the pharynx, and we call that swallowing. Swallowing. Movement of the bolus leaving your mouth, going backwards to the pharynx, we call that swallowing. Okay? And you have muscles in your tongue that help you to do that. The roof of the mouth is called the palate, and in the mouth you have the tongue. Look at this picture right here. Here is your mouth, here is your tongue with the different muscles. But look behind it. This is called the pharynx, this part. But the part is behind the nose, behind the mouth, and behind the larynx. All these parts here are called pharynx. Okay? There are two extra things here that will make the food go down instead of going up or instead of going to the air, which is called uvula. If you open your mouth wide, you will see it hanging in the back, and also epiglottis to cover the respiratory system. So you're moving down the pharynx. The other thing, so here is epiglottis. The other thing that also here to block the food from going into the air is your vocal cords. We call it the glottis. Here is a uvula in the back. And here is the tongue, obviously. Here is the esophagus. The food moved down the esophagus. So now you got the food in your mouth. You understood this. Swallowing to move it to the pharynx. What's after the pharynx? Movement to the esophagus. Now the bolus is moving down the esophagus. Moving, like, what do you call this? You're moving down. I call it peristalsis because it's one way. Look at the peristalsis. Move this way. Push it. How do you push it? Contract behind it and open in front of it. Moving forwards, moving forwards, moving forward, and we call that peristalsis. The chewing is voluntary, and you know that. You put the food in your mouth. If I ask you, like, stop chewing, you will stop. You can. So this is voluntary. But anything else is involuntary after that. So once you swallow, the reflex that's going to close the uvula here and the epiglottis here, and everything that follow that is involuntary. You have no say on it, and you cannot control it. That's it. Just the chewing part is voluntary. And look how swallowing happened here. The green here is called the bolus of food. And look at this. Look at this picture here. This is perfect. Look how this uvula closed the entrance to the nose. And look how this epiglottis closed the entrance to the respiratory system or the respiratory tree. Now look at this green bolus. It have no other way but to move down to the esophagus. Look here in the esophagus. It's moving down toward the stomach. So chewing, is that mechanical or chemical? What do you think?
Mechanical.
It's mechanical. And how about you're using the enzymes? Is that mechanical or chemical?
Chemical.
That's chemical. Yes. In the mouth, lubrication will happen using mucin, which is a mucus secretion. Okay? But what you swallow is a bolus of food. Which one of those, epiglottis or glottis, that close the entrance to the larynx and trachea, which is the respiratory system? Is it the epiglottis or the glottis?
Epiglottis.
The epiglottis. Block the entrance to the glottis. The bolus move down the esophagus into the stomach. What do you call this contraction? Which is a movement. What do we call it? The movement down, esophagus to the stomach. Peristalsis. Peristalsis. Now the stomach. When the bolus of foods move to the stomach contain a lot of strong muscles. And remember, I told you the two types of muscle, circular, which is around the lumen, and longitudinal, which is parallel to the longitudinal axis. Stomach has a third type of muscle that's oblique, and you have to know this. Let me say it again. The whole alimentary tract has two types of muscles that we need to know. Circular muscle, circling around the lumen, and longitudinal muscle, parallel to the longitudinal axis. What do you mean by parallel to the longitudinal axis? Look at this. This is the longitudinal axis like this. Look. From above down. Anything goes in that direction is longitudinal. The other muscles are circular muscle. But this is not the case for the stomach. The stomach has extra one, which is called oblique, and this is something that I want you to know. What else do we need to know about the stomach? The stomach is specifically important. This is the most important organ that we need to know for this course. Number one, the stomach is a muscular organ and it can stretch a lot. Like your stomach is like this, but it can be doubled or even more because it can stretch to accommodate the food that you're putting into it. What do we do in the stomach? Both mechanical and chemical digestion, and I talked about this. Mechanical digestion using the three types of muscles, you break it down further, and then chemical digestion, which is the second part, which is using the enzymes. At the end, the bolus, after going to the stomach, and then in the stomach, we're going to do more mechanical digestion and more chemical digestion. Now it's paste-like. The food that's at the end, that's about to leave the stomach, going to the small intestine, is paste-like, and we call that chyme. Chyme. This is the end of the esophagus, and this is the beginning of the stomach. Look at this sphincter right here. There is a sphincter that's guarding the way or the entrance from the food from the end of the esophagus to the beginning of the stomach. Why? Because remember, in the stomach, we all know that we have acids in our stomach. So the food going to the stomach will be mixed with enzymes and acids. You don't want that to go back to the esophagus because it's going to burn our esophagus, and this is what we call it acid reflux, or you say like I have burning, right? Heartburn. I have heartburn. It means the acid go to the esophagus. It should not, because of this sphincter. It's called sphincter. It allows the bolus to move down to the stomach, but it doesn't go back to the esophagus. Now look at these three layers of the muscles, and this is something that you can be asked about, and you can see this picture. So I told you about two pictures so far that you need to know. The picture of this whole system and this picture right here showing you the outer muscle, which is longitudinal, the middle, which is circular, and the innermost, which is oblique. This is for the muscles. What are the other layers? Same, just like anything else. Mucosa is the innermost. Submucosa is the next one. And then the three layers together are called muscularis. The last one here is called serosa. So this is why we have these muscles. Look, the circular muscles that are going to do like this to break it down more. And then the longitudinal muscles will make the stomach shorter to move forward. And here is the oblique muscle. You don't have to know all these details, just know the three types of muscles. In the stomach, we're going to add hydrochloric acid. This is the acid in order to kill the microbes, and mucus, just like the mucin in our mouth for moisturizing and lubrication, and then enzymes to break down, to chemically break down the food. The stomach is about the size of your fist, but it can stretch into double or maybe more. The food is going to, the stomach is going to mix and store the ingested food for some time until you finish the digestion. The stomach does not absorb, which is the next step. The absorption is in the intestine, not in the stomach. Stomach produce gastric juice. What's the gastric juice? The acid, mucin, and enzymes. Most importantly, acid, enzymes, to break down the three types that you see in the food, which is fat, protein, and carbohydrates. The end of the stomach is called the pylorus. If you look at this part right here is called pylorus, and there is another sphincter here guarding the exit of the food from the stomach to the small intestine, and it doesn't go backwards. So how many sphincters? Here is one, gastroesophageal sphincter between the stomach and the esophagus. Move one way from the esophagus to the stomach, and then from the stomach to the small intestine, it's called the pyloric sphincter. So these are the sphincters that we need to know. Pyloric sphincter here. The next part is the small intestine. I just want you to know the three parts. The first part is called duodenum, which is at the beginning, right after the stomach here. Let me show you here again. This very first part, C-shaped, very short, duodenum. What's after the duodenum? Jejunum. This part right here. The last one is ileum. So if I ask you, what are the three parts of the small intestine? Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. You need to know that. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum, in that sequence. The first part of the stomach is duodenum. The second part is jejunum, followed by ileum. DJ-I. You know the DJ? DJ-I. I am the DJ. DJ-I. Just to remember it. This would be too much details. I just already told you the layers. That's the same for everything. Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa. And I told you that the muscles are only circular and longitudinal. Circular inside, longitudinal outside. The only exception is the stomach, and this is oblique muscles. So here it is. The intestine, this is one more thing. The intestine, it's different than everything else, that it has finger-like projections are called villi to increase the surface area for absorption. Because what do we do in the intestine? Digestion and absorption. Stomach, digestion. Intestine, digestion and absorption. Okay, I'm giving you what you need to know. I know there are more details. I wouldn't worry much about it. The next organ is the pancreas. What do we need to know about the pancreas? Enzymes for all types of food, no exception. Enzymes for all types of food, carbohydrate, fat, or lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, all types. And the pancreatic juice with all these enzymes go to the first part of the duodenum right after the chyme moved from the stomach to the duodenum. One more time. What happened when you finish digesting the food in the stomach? Now it's paste-like. Now it's mixed with acids and enzymes. That's broken down. It's paste-like, and we call it chyme. Chyme go to the duodenum, and the pancreas is going to secrete its secretions to the duodenum as well in order to work on that chyme coming. Is that it? No. Here come the liver. Liver is going to make something called bile. This bile will be stored in the bile, in the biliary, in the gallbladder, I'm sorry, stored in the gallbladder, and then also go to the duodenum. So what come to the duodenum here? The food, which is chyme, go to the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. The pancreatic juice go to the duodenum in order to work on that chyme. Also, the bile will come to the same duodenum. All of this is going to mix together in the duodenum. What's the bile? The bile is going to help us to break down fat specifically because it contains something called bile salt. The bile work on the fat, bile salt. The small intestine, obviously, most of the food will be absorbed here. And what's absorption? Again, the absorption is the building unit, the smallest building unit of the nutrients, all types. Cross the wall of the intestine, go to the blood. We call that absorption. Where does it happen? Mostly in the small intestine, small part in the large intestine. Small intestine has a large surface area. Did you tell us about that? Yes, I told you we have villi, like finger-like projections. Look at my fingers. If I have this is the only surface right here. This is small surface area. Look at this. All of this, surface area. So the villi in the intestine to increase the surface area. Enzymes come from what? From the pancreas. Bile salt come from the liver, stored in the gallbladder. Emulsify fats. What's emulsify? Emulsify to break it down more. Can you give us practical example? Yes. You know when you eat in the dishes, if the food that you're eating contain fat, it's hard to clean it. But you pour this liquid soap into it, Palmolive or whatever it is, you pour it on it, and then you easy clean it. This liquid soup that you pour it, it's contains something similar to the bile salt. This actually, when they invented that dishes, the soup dishes or dishes soup or like the liquid soup, they invented it to be from the idea of the bile salt because it break down the fat and then you put it under the water, it clean it right away. So this is the same idea. The other movement that I talked about is back and forth movement. That's called segmentation. To make more contact between the food and the wall of the intestine to improve absorption. Look at this. You go like forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward. Segmentation for mixing to improve absorption. While peristalsis is one-way movement down the canal from the mouth toward the anus. Too much information. I told you what you need to know. Segmentation versus peristalsis. We talked about absorption. Pancreas, I told you about it. The pancreas secretes something called pancreatic juice. What's a pancreatic juice? These are the enzymes basically to break down all types of nutrients that reach the duodenum coming from the stomach, passing through the pyloric sphincter, go to the duodenum. Is it only the food coming from the stomach and the pancreatic juice? No, I talked about the bile salt to emulsify fats. What are the names of the enzymes? Too much. Just know that there are enzymes that break down all types of food. This is from the pancreas. Is that the only function of the pancreas? No, there is also another function that's called endocrine function, which is to make hormones like insulin. Gallbladder, I want you to know about the gallbladder, which is this, that temporarily store the bile. Does it make the bile? No, liver make the bile. It's temporarily store it and concentrate it. That's it. Sometimes it get inflamed, and we call that cholecystitis, but not the most important thing. If that happen, it is an issue, can look like this. And if that the case, it should be removed somehow, which is not our interest here. Our interest, I told you. Why do you have the gallbladder? Temporary storage and concentrating the bile. Does it make the bile? No. The liver make the bile. Liver make the bile. And we store it temporarily into the gallbladder. When the food leave the stomach, go to the duodenum, gallbladder contract, pushing the bile to go together with the pancreatic secretion into the duodenum. More than enough to know. Other functions of the liver. Is that the only thing? Does it just make bile? No. The liver store the extra amount of nutrients. It make it into bigger pieces and store it. It get rid of so storage. This is one, storage. Storage of what? Extra nutrients. It store it, convert it to bigger particles and store it. Practical example. I'll give you a practical example. I eat my breakfast and I go to work. The food moves down, digested, absorbed, go to the blood, go to the cells use it, break it down. Remember the cellular respiration, glycolysis, Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, and then electron transport chain. Okay, you're done. You got the energy that you need. But now I don't have more nutrients. I didn't eat yet. Don't worry. The liver store extra amounts of the food, of the nutrients, something called glycogen. It converts the glucose into glycogen. So when that happens, if you're fasting or you didn't eat for extended period of time, the liver is storing extra amounts of glycogen, also storing extra amounts of vitamins. Also remove the toxins that's in the food. When absorption goes and everything go to the liver, anything that's bad, it's going to be removed, like toxins. So which one has exocrine and endocrine function? What's exocrine? Exocrine is exo, something that goes out, exo. Look at the pancreas again. Remember I told you, what is the pancreas? Yes. Remember I told you that we make the pancreatic juice, which are the enzymes that go to the duodenum to work on the food. This type that I just mentioned, we make it here, it leave go to the duct, and go to the duodenum. This is called exocrine. What's exocrine? Exo means out. Crine means secretion. Secretion that goes out. Look at these ducts. It moved down the ducts. The other one, which is the endocrine, it doesn't move down ducts. It go to the blood. And we call those hormones, like insulin. So we have two functions in the pancreas, exo and endo. Exo, out, exo, exterior, out. Crine, secretion, external secretion. How? Secretions here, enzymes, go to the duct, go to the duodenum. As long as you have a duct, it will lead it to the duodenum. We call that exocrine or exocrine. Endo means in. It doesn't have a duct. Secreted in between the cells, it go to the blood like insulin. So the pancreas is the one that have exocrine and endocrine, and it produce digestive enzymes. Gallbladder store excess bile. Liver produce bile salt. Help specifically fat. Only function of the liver is accessory organ for digestion. Is that the only function? No, obviously, there are other functions of the stomach. Large intestine. You might see a picture like this, and all what I want you to know is the different parts. Cecum, ascending, meaning going up. You move down, you move up like this. Look, up, and go transversely, and then you go down. Ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. And this part right here looks like an S shape. Sigma. Sigma is an S shape in Latin and Greek. Sigmoid. Rectum, this part that's going straight, storing the feces temporarily, and then it leaves through the anus. Around the anus, there are two sphincters in order for the feces not to leave, not to be excreted until you actually relax. And that's why we have these sphincters right here. These are the different parts of the large intestine. So here it is. Cecum is the first part right here. Cecum it means like a pouch, which is this pouch here. And then ascending, going up, transverse, going transversely, descending from the name, you're going down. Sigmoid looks like sigma, like S. Rectum, anus. All this part until here, this is called colon. Just this part is called rectum and anus. So colon, all of this, plus rectum and anus at the end. There is something appended here that's called the appendix. I think we all know, like people having appendicitis, they have this pain on the right side here. They scream, I have pain here. This is appendicitis. It is something appended. Is it part of the tract? No, it is not. Something appended. It's actually lymphoid. It's more for fighting the pathogens. It have nothing to do with the function of the digestive tract. What are we going to do in the large intestine? We all know that we make feces from the remnants, the waste products, the bacteria, the remnants. That will make feces. Is that the only thing? No. We actually reabsorb or take back our water, our vitamins. We take it back. You don't want it to go in the feces. And we make vitamins by the bacteria in the large intestine. And this is what I want you to know. One more time. What do we do in the large intestine? The easy one is remnants, toxins, some water. This is feces. Is that the only thing? No. We reabsorb water. We take a lot of the water back. Wait a minute. What if I don't reabsorb the water back? You will have diarrhea and dehydration. We take most of the water back. We leave some water just to make the consistency of the feces, to make it soft enough to leave. That's it. But the rest of the water, we absorb it. Take it back. Re means again. Absorb it. We take it back. Is it water only? No, there is also vitamins. The bile, salt, we take it back. And also the bacteria, there is good bacteria in the large intestine that makes vitamins. Here are the bacteria, and these bacteria make some vitamins like vitamin K and B12. And so at the end, again, what's going to be secreted is the remnants and the waste and waste products and the toxins together with some water to give it the consistency. So we reabsorb most of the water and we leave part of it. What if I don't reabsorb much of the water? You get diarrhea. Why? Or how the diarrhea work? Because the diarrhea, if you have something irritating your colon or your large intestine, it's irritant. So the intestine contract fast, fast, fast. You don't have enough time to reabsorb the water. A lot of the water will stay and go to the feces, and we call that diarrhea. The opposite is contraction is too slow, so that you reabsorb water, you reabsorb water, you reabsorb water until the food is too dry. Not the food, I'm sorry. The stool is too dry, and it takes time to leave out. Just to give you idea, it's all about contraction of the large intestine. You should contract enough to get rid of the feces, and that's it. Too fast, diarrhea. You didn't have the time to reabsorb. Too slow, you take too much time to absorb, constipation. This is just for your information. So here it is, we reabsorb water to maintain homeostasis. We reabsorb salt as well. The remaining material, waste products, the remnants, the bacteria, with some water, we call it feces. And the bacteria in the large intestine, bacteria make vitamins. And that's it. This is more of summarizing what we already talked about. These are the different parts. Again, this is the summary. You can read it after you're done with the chapter. So I'm going to stop here, stop sharing.